The level of connection you feel in your home dramatically influences your experiences there. Get the tools to control that connection in your communities with the first multifamily platform that unifies management and resident experiences to create smart apartments. Talk to a RealPage consultant today to see how your properties can meet the future of multifamily with the Smart Building Suite.
You're listening to the only podcast where media and brands converge to advance truth and civility in our country while restoring the Fourth Estate and helping businesses in the process. I'm your host, Dan Granger. Welcome to the Media Roundtable. Our guest today is Harleen Kaur. Harleen is the CEO and co-founder of the news comparison platform Ground News. Now, check this out. Harleen got her degree in aerospace engineering and went on to stints with NASA, where she worked on the Pluto-bound spacecraft New Horizons, Rolls-Royce, where she was the youngest and first female vice president. And then in 2017, she launched Ground News, which is the comparison website that helps you see media outlets across the political spectrum and if they are covering or ignoring a topic. Ground News has swelled over 250,000 users who come from a wide variety of countries and political backgrounds, and all united in their desire to fix a fundamentally broken news ecosystem. So welcome, Harleen.
Thanks, Dan. Really delighted to be speaking with you because Media Roundtable's mission couldn't have a bigger overlap with Ground News. So it's kind of similar minds talking together.
Yeah, I love when we get to meet folks who kind of have the same type of crazy that we do to take on this type of an issue, right? So we're all in this thing together, and I'm really, really glad for the work that you're doing and that you're here to talk to us about it. So I gave the maybe clinical definition of Ground News, perhaps, but can you just set the table and share from your perspective, what is Ground News?
Sure. So Ground News is a news comparison platform with the most succinct form as you described it. Our mission is for people to be able to understand the news story in the full picture, in its fullest form, by showing it across a variety of varying news sources, varying across political spectrum, varying across locations, and then also across time as the story develops. So to give you a prime example, to take a political story, we'll show you all the way from a publication like Mother Jones or Huffington Post, and keep going towards the left to CNNs of the world, in the middle, very press wire services like Reuters, or more central like NPR, and then keep going to the right from Fox to even Breitbart, or even more extreme, all in the attempt to show you how a single news piece can be exaggerated or equivocated. And if you were to just rely on a single news source or single set of news sources in that set of the spectrum, then you'll miss out on the big picture.
Okay. And so if I'm a potential user of Ground News, what's the opportunity for me? How does this help my life? And then how does it help society?
Sure. So how does it help your life is that if you were to put together and try to find all the news sources for a relevant story, it will take you hours of your day to do that. So we do all the heavy lifting for you, and you don't have to open 10,000 browser windows or find out which are the news sources that are covering its most opposing view, or which are the geographically diverse sources that's covering the story. So we do all the heavy lifting for you, and we bring all the information together at your fingertips. So I say the only ingredient that you as a reader or a consumer of Ground News needs to add is critical thinking. And we make that happen for you. And why is it important? Because I think what we read influences our perspective and our outlook towards what's happening in the world. And if that is limited, then obviously you're missing out on opportunities of what's going on. And the biggest thing is that you're not going to be fully informed.
And And if you can draw that out a little further, what is the impact in our daily experience, our relationships, outcomes of not being informed?
Yeah, let's talk a few examples. So a typical one that is happening in especially the U.S. is people have stopped talking to each other. So when you run into people who have different point of views, not difficult, different point of views than you, then people have simply started avoiding those conversations as opposed to speaking with your family member or friend or an uncle or a neighbor, and because you don't understand where they're coming from. And you start thinking, okay, I don't even know why this person thinks this way, because you're not reading and consuming the same pieces of same news that they are. So the first opportunity is to engage in that conversation, to have that healthy exchange, and then the opportunities extend. So even things like market opportunities. So what do I invest in? If I understand more what's going on in the world and what's coming my way, then I can do that. And ultimately, your political choices. That's the biggest power as a citizen that you have, is to exercise your vote, and to be able to do that in the most informed manner that you can is your responsibility and your privilege. So relying on more than one source is what the big opportunity is by reading a multi-source news like Proud News.
Harleen, there are millions, you might even argue billions of opportunities online to get access to new information, right? Or things that claim to be news. How is Ground News different from the multitude of other aggregation platforms?
Yeah. So that is the kind of dichotomy of this information that we live in. There is so much information. At the same time, we don't know what information that we should consume or not. So I heard this example. I won't claim it to be my own, but back in the day, think of it as like there were 3 flavors of ice cream, and there was like chocolate or strawberry and vanilla, and you knew exactly which you would get and what it stood for. But now there are thousands and millions and tens of millions of flavors of ice cream, and some of them are poison. So if you pick the wrong one, then you're not knowing what you're getting into, because they feel and sound like news sources, and they're not. And yes, there are a lot of aggregators out there who are doing the same. At Ground News, what we do is, again, the pre-work. Before we let any news source into Ground News, even international news sources, we figure out what that news source is, how long they have existed, what else they have covered, have they been called out for anything wrong they have published, and do all those checks for you before we let that news source in. And second, the thing we do is we label it very, very as best we can and as neutrally we can. So if you come across a news source that you've never come across before, you can say, okay, I see what this would stand for and what would be associated with. And that going into it with the open eyes, I think, is the biggest difference the biggest benefit that Ground News provides.
Can you talk a little bit about how you decide what goes where on the platform?
Sure.
Yeah. How does it work?
So the 3 vectors right now we label news by is kind of simple. It's just who broke the story, and then how did it evolve. A lot of times it's the press wire services like AP or Reuters that broke the story, and then it evolves and gets picked up by other outlets. The second is location. Labeling location is simple, that this is a news source from Canada or Russia or where it's based. So it's important for you to know where it lies from. And then the trickiest one is bias, because how do I determine how do I label CNN versus how do I label Fox? And this is where we do not reinvent the wheel, and we rely on third-party independent companies that are doing this for a living. And one of them were your guests previous week, Vanessa from Adfontes. So we take an average across 3 rating agencies, which are MediaWise, FactCheck, AllSides, and Adfontes, and take a statistical average and try to show the most neutral rating as possible. And that's where we show the news source where they lie on the spectrum. Again, one thing worth pointing out is our consumers even sometimes get hung up on the bias ratings. Why is this lean left versus left?
Sure.
The point is not to get hung up where they are. The point is to see how varied it can be across the spectrum, how the news piece can vary. And this is just an indicator of where we're placing it on the spectrum, so you can navigate the news a bit more quickly.
Do people want to know that their preconceived notions may not be seen the same everywhere? Do people want a multitude of perspectives when you can just have somebody tell you how great you are and how right you are, and who you need to be mad at because they don't get it like you do?
It's a very good question, Dan, and that's very basic human psychology. And yeah, the honest answer is it's very, very uncomfortable, including for myself, when I come across an opinion or it's a piece that's covered very differently than I have it. So yes, the people who come to ground news are, to begin with, a special subset of people who haven't made up their mind that this is it. I am just ascribing to one version of quote unquote truth. So they have to have an open mind and be able to and be willing to challenge themselves and have their beliefs challenged. But I think it's true that everybody should do that. And we make it very easier. So very easy to do that. One of the most common feedback I get is I had a couple of go-to news sources, but given you placed the news source I would never go to right next to it, I would just click on it and just read what's going on. So my news diet has become much more diverse since I started reading ground news. But yeah, it's a challenging thing to do, and it's much more comfortable living in your bubble. And that's why, I don't know, the documentary Social Dilemma, and there's nothing new in there. It's just much easier to send people down the rabbit holes than presenting with them with views that are not their own. But again, this is in line with your mission, not incentivizing necessarily clicks and just making money off that, but presenting the full information. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, attention at all costs is one of the challenges here. And what we have found is that when people are presented with the option, they're usually going to take the low-hanging fruit and just be told what they want, right? So it's like getting somebody to want to hurt themselves in a way, to experience some sort of, you have to have a certain level of humility, certain level of curiosity. And I don't know if it's something that people are born with, but I wonder if everything that we're working on, that a lot of people are working on, I wonder if part of that just needs a big branding campaign on the importance of being curious, right? Like, I don't know if that
being curious and importance of like smart is the new cool, like, or being open-minded is the new cool. It's okay to and the other one I think we don't as culturally reward people is to change their opinion or change their mind. So as we grow up as individuals, our beliefs change over time, our understanding changes over time. And I don't think we reward that enough. So we would be rewarding to saying, okay, now I have more information. Now I'm reading more. Now I'm presented with more of data. Now I'm going to change my beliefs or evolve my beliefs as I go along. And we almost just say, oh, wow, you changed your mind. You used to think that. Yeah, of course, that's a good thing I changed my mind because I didn't have enough understanding of the issue before.
Yeah, agreed. So you kind of bet the farm on this thing. You had a career doing some very interesting work in outer space, of all places. And you came out and you said, well, I'm going to try to give something that is countercultural to make an impact. How has the market responded to you?
To my surprise and delight, very well. So what we have found out is there was definitely a latent demand for a product like this where people wanted more than one opinion and more than one perspective and to be able to consume that in a frictionless manner. So as you mentioned, we have a couple of 100,000 readers who have joined us, and there's a fraction of them who are paying for it as well. So they want to support our mission in terms of us for me to be able to feed ourselves on a team and keep doing the work, which helps. But yeah, the credit is not necessarily that. Of course, we did build a product that's resonated with the people, but the credit is for people to have that realization. And I think there are external forces, of course, why people are having more of that realization in 2020 and 2021, because the problem just keeps getting worse. And but the good thing is it's in forefront of people's mind now. There is an acknowledgement. So for the first time in the last couple of years, the news consumption on social media has actually gone down. So people have started understanding that since Twitter and Facebook, they are great platforms to get news quickly, but they don't have checks and balances, and you are required to do work. And if you cannot do the work, then you should go elsewhere and consume news. So it's good to see those trends.
So if you think about it in terms of like before and after, when you hear from your customers, by the way, I don't know exactly what terminology you use, customers, members, subscribers. Okay, great. Yeah. So if I'm a subscriber to Ground News, what's the testimonial you get? What do people say to you as their reaction that is benefiting them from having participated?
Yeah, the biggest benefit is people repeatedly say, I feel more informed. I feel more informed. I have more information on what's going on, and with spending lesser amount of time. A lot of times people say I have lesser anxiety because there is now a huge push towards better mental health and self-improvement and all of that. But having a news cycle that makes you a lot more anxious is not helpful in that process. So Ground News subscribers feel that they feel more informed and less anxious and understand what's really going on.
Boy, that's a really compelling way to think about this. Is like, okay, you've got Headspace, which we work with and love Headspace, but Ground News is also a way that you can reach a state of serenity in a way, just right? Because it really is anxiety provoking. I mean, I feel like we all kind of have a certain level of addiction to all of the shock, but it hurts us, right?
It does, and I think we as readers and consumers of news are to blame, right? We, again, going back to what you pointed towards human psychology, either we like reading more of what we agree with, or we like the shock value. So me and my co-founder were talking today. There was a headline that used the word eviscerate. Nothing in news headlines should use the word eviscerate and cause that reaction in you, unless and until somebody went through that, I don't know, something terrible happened, which is not the case, right? So the more sensational the headlines, we have the tendency to click on that, again, rewarding the bad behavior as opposed to. So we as consumers very much need to be aware of that and kind of stop and think, is this causing an emotional reaction on me, a reaction for me? And if it is, it was probably written that way. That inflammatory adjective was probably thrown in there to have that reaction and for you to be clicking on that headline as opposed to something that's just presenting facts.
Can you tell us a little bit about the business model? How do you get revenue? Or what type of company is it? How does that work?
Sure. So we get revenue through subscription model. So we have a free product, and we want to have a free product accessible to everybody who cannot pay, and we will continue to do that. But at the same time, to be able to, of course, advance the company and to bring the product and value to more people, we ask for a subscription. We have a tier as low as $1 a month, which is less than what your coffee would cost you, and that's what we make. That's what we ask people to pay for, and we want to be a company that's fully supported by our consumers and subscribers who see value in the product and just pay for it.
Okay, and are you a for-profit company, nonprofit?
Yes, we are a for-profit company.
Well, which, by the way, can lead to better outcomes for the mission, oftentimes, not to disparage nonprofits. So all of these are important, but it can be a very interesting way to attract levels of talent that are harder for nonprofits.
100% agreed with you, Dan. So We have engineers who have previously worked at Netflix, Amazon, Microsoft, the big tech, and
wow.
to be able to have a product that, again, it's such a competitive space. If I'm fighting for real estate on your phone or on your desktop or whatever format you're consuming ground news on, there are a lot of competitors out there. Like very big tech companies have news products. How do I deliver value to you? And to say that this is a product which is as easy, as enjoyable, and as efficient to use as a big tech company, then we have to attract the talent. Of course, we cannot pay as big as these tech companies, so we do get people joining our team who believe in the mission. So it is a combination of both, but we cannot ask them to work on nothing.
Yeah, that's important. But also then you can kind of filter out people who are there because they want a paycheck versus people that really believe in the mission, right? Exactly. Also very important. And I'm going to ask with my agency captain hat on, are you thinking about accepting advertising revenue?
Very good question, Dan. And then probably we should have a follow-on call for me to get your advice on it.
Yeah.
Because and how to do it well, because as one of the problems in news, as we are talking about, is the revenue, the ad revenue being rewarded by clickbaity news or news that's sensational, and that's the problem we are trying to solve. So how do we turn on ad revenue and at the same time can adhere to our principles, which is reward, balance, and good journalism, and providing full picture news to our consumers?
Well, a lot of people that are listening to this are in the marketing field. And, this is the kind of thing that I think people want to sponsor. They, so much of what they're sponsoring in news or other kinds of media, you have to hold your nose while you do it because you need to reach that demographic, right? But what you're doing is something that people can feel good about. And I think, it takes somebody like you who's really a missionary at this to make sure that you wall off the monetization piece so that it doesn't impact product, right? But I think this is about as safe as you could get for an advertiser. So I think it's a compelling model.
That's a good point. The only point now that I think about it, the only time where we gotten a lot of inbound interest we actually entertained advertisements and sponsors is our newsletters. So our newsletters list is a couple of 100,000 subscribers now, and they are, as you said, a demographic which is open-minded, well-educated, wants to make a change. And we've gotten a lot of inbound interest saying, hey, we want to reach that demographic. But at the same time, we have tried to make a decision, as you're saying, does the advertiser or the sponsor, does their mission overlap with us? Is it something that if we put in front of our subscribers and consumers, they're going to say, why are you doing this?
It's a delicate balance. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah,
we're all on a tightrope here. Okay, so and then people are listening to this. How do they engage with the content? App, website, social. What are the different? Explain the tentacles.
The tentacles, yes. Yeah, you called it tentacles, I call it spigots.
Spigots is nicer. I like spigots better.
Yeah. So we have a website. So that's the simplest form to engage with our content. It's ground.news, and I've given your team a link which we can make available to your listeners. Ground.news is a free website, and people can go on there, and every single news story on there has tens and hundreds of perspectives, so they can quickly get that. We have apps, which is iOS app, Android app, and even a Mac app. Now we have a browser extension, which is very interesting. We realized that we can't make people all come to Ground News to consume their news, and their news journeys are kind of set. So what the browser extension does is, if you are consuming news on social media like Facebook or Twitter or Reddit, it shows a little thing right next to the likes or retweets, and it tells you how many other perspectives of this news are, or where is the leaning of this political source. So it's like a little reminder which I personally find it very helpful. That every time you come across a URL of news on the feed, all you need to do is just install that free browser extension. We also have newsletters. So again, our crowd seems very different than our app crowd, which is more active in terms of consumption. But the newsletters we have two newsletters called Blind Spot Report, which is the most famous one, which shows you the news from the week that has the coverage that hasn't been covered by left or right. So the least diverse coverage. So either left ignores the issue or the right ignores the issue, and that's quite interesting to read. I'll give you an example. So AOC raised $1 million for Texas, and of course, right doesn't want to know that she did that. Or 10 million people are displaced by climate change. Of course, the other side doesn't want to know. So it's very, very interesting to these blind spots and just gives you the overview. The other one is called Burst Your Bubble, which is my personal favorite. So we take 8 profiles of readers across the U.S. and give you a news feed based on their interests. So if you are an East Coast urbanite, what this person might be reading, or if you're a West Coast innovator like yourself, what you might be reading. If you are a Southern person, what they might be reading. So kind of getting into the newsfeed and the mindset of somebody else. So I feel like I love the term is walking in someone else's news. And it feels very, very different. And again, it kind of shocks you what a totally different profile might be reading.
You got some good hooks there for an engineer. I'm going to be honest. That's,
Thank you.
That's
I can't take credit for all of it.
Well, I'll give you credit. Great job. Let me talk to you about what the Media Roundtable really is. It's not just a podcast, it's a movement. Negative polarization is making all of us miserable. We've talked about how 80% of Americans now believe that the country is falling apart. And meanwhile, private companies are the most trusted institutions in America, while trust in media has never been lower. And the irony here is that it's these same private companies that actually make news media possible through sponsorship. So the Media Roundtable joins together media and marketers and mobilizes them to promote truth and civility in journalism. We're committed to increasing advertiser support for content that shares our values of clarity, fairness, truth, tolerance, respect, and de-escalation. By the way, you can learn more about this when you read the pledge in full at MediaRoundtable.com. So if you're in media or marketing, you can make a powerful difference in helping to bind the wounds of our fractured nation without compromising your business goals or your brand values. Media Roundtable is here to help by providing resources and support for our members every step of the way. We want you to get involved. All you need to do is visit MediaRoundtable.com and sign the pledge right now. Let's talk about you for a minute. Why on earth would you do this? Why personally? Like, why you? I know why the world needs it. I know why the industry does, but why did you do this?
Like most engineers, if you experience a problem yourself, you want to design a solution first for yourself, and then ends up being for other people. And that was the case for me. I think I was mentioning it the other day to you. I was born in India, grew up in India, lived in Europe, worked in South Asia, CIS, Eastern Europe, a lot of countries. So I know a lot of people from a lot of countries, and a common problem across the globe is how the news is being represented. And yes, it's bad in North America where there is a lot of bias, but the problem is really exaggerated and exacerbated in a lot of other countries where people are literally dying because of fake news. In India, people are getting lynched when somebody says, oh, so-and-so did this or killed a cow, and everybody shows up at this guy's home and just kills him, literally. And so
that's happening today.
That is happening today. It's not 100 years ago. So the WhatsApp has become a very lethal thing in India. And again, so it just highlights highlights the issue that you need to have reliable news sources. And there are a lot of countries where being a journalism is very difficult, but they are doing their job. Like the case that's on forefront and was in forefront for a couple of years was Jamal Khashoggi, and he was literally killed. Journalist, or I've met him in person, Jason Rezaian, who was working for Washington Post, spent how many days in jail in Iran, or in Myanmar. Reuters journalists who tried to cover the Rohingya crisis were put in jail for 500 and something days. So people are literally putting their lives online to do good journalism, but that doesn't make it to people. So how do we make sure that a common person reads the news that is true, that's accurate, that's full picture, and we can bring again good journalism to people? So yeah, kind of a personal cause at this point for me.
What's mind-blowing about what you're saying, I mean, the fact that people are being lynched in India, I imagine that's a metaphor for things that are happening all around the world based on false information. But then you think about journalists and the journalism, people talk about the media, and they're generally, as our last guest pointed out, they're usually talking about like Fox or CNN, right? And that's what they think about when they think about media. And if you think about the idea that you have some journalists whose profession is to stir up dissension, their job is to get attention, because we live in a world where there's an attention economy and dollars are rewarding those impressions. And so whatever gets that attention is fine.
Yeah.
And there's a journalist on the other side of the spectrum that is in prison, that is going to lose their life because they're trying to do something honorable, because they're trying to do something important and noble. And it's tragic in a way to think about how much of our time, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, how much of our time and energy and the work we do in our businesses is all working to support one side, which is lower hanging fruit, rather than the other. Very, very incredible.
And it goes back to what your mission is then is having the correct incentives, right? How do we incentivize that latter behavior for everybody to read and have that attention span for issues that are really pressing? How do we bring that? And how do we bring revenue? Because yes, both are journalists, but both are media, but both are fighting for dollars at the end of the day, and they need money to keep the newspapers, newsrooms alive. And yes, some have gotten greedy, but there is a real problem. How do we keep the newsrooms alive and make sure that there is good quality journalism that we can consume?
So, can you talk a little bit more about how stories are covered internationally and how it can vary from region to region? I mean, we're used to, so much of our time is spent on right versus left in America, right? But some of these stories transcend that and are different on a whole nother level that we don't even discuss or are aware of. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's a very important point, Dan. And again, one of our missions to show the international coverage and how the geopolitical agenda really varies. So I'm actually going to read this one news story recently published that if you look at the headlines, how it varies by the country. And this is about the Uyghurs in China who are getting persecuted. So if I read CNN's coverage from US, it says new report claims evidence of Beijing's intent to destroy Uyghur people. So intent to destroy is how US is reporting it. Guardian from UK is saying China's treatment of Uyghurs breaches UN Genocide Convention. And that's what UK is thinking. But if I go to Russia is saying China rebukes Westerns for fabricating lies about Uyghurs. So Russia is siding with China and saying, this is all lies. And the last one is just very shocking. And this is from Xinhua News in China. And it's saying It's not even addressing the report, the UN report, and it's just saying population of Uyghurs have doubled in the last 40 years. So you can see the same piece of news about Uyghurs and their treatment in China and how the same headline just varied around the world. And you can kind of see where they lie with their allies, their alliance with China on that geopolitical spectrum.
Arlene, how do you feel as you're reading that when you're seeing those differences?
Outraged that I feel like why are there no, again, going back to engineering standards, and I'm used to utilities where things have to be labeled of what they are. And this is how you can take a UN report and just distort it to whatever you want. So it's outrageous in that respect.
So let's talk about China for a minute. How much influence does China have on what shows up on a screen or a speaker or on a digital news site in America?
It's an interesting question. Again, I would like to answer this personally as opposed to on behalf of Ground News. And
okay.
I feel like, yes, the influence is increasing, especially when we are using more digital devices that are made in their country. But that's same true for devices made in US or in another country, right? So you are bringing this technology. We are talking over Zoom. If I go to Google Meet or whatever, you can see every single thing is being recorded. So why is that not true of Chinese technology? So they're ingesting all the time. Or companies like TikTok, which was very interesting, the forced sale of TikTok to Oracle that took place because it was almost considered how central it was becoming to the young folks' consumption. So I don't think it's particularly, again, my personal view, it's particularly China. It can be any economy or any foreign power that has a different agenda than you, and if it's putting out technology, software or hardware, it's going to have an impact on how you think about things and how you consume things. There are news sources and news apps which are very mainstream. I don't want to call them by name, that are funded by China, and they are high on the ratings and ranks, and most of us consume those. So it's hard to separate or try to think that they are not going to be influenced.
Well, so on that topic, talk about the impact of corporate entities on what we see. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So again, this is a different vector than simply bias or location. Again, agendas are influenced by several things, and corporate entities are certainly a big one. For example, who owns the news source? So News Corp owns a big majority of right-wing media in the U.S., and that's why it starts sounding the same. If I'm reading, if I feel rich and I'm drinking champagne in my first class and reading Wall Street Journal, I feel very differentiated than a Fox News viewer, but I'm the same because I'm consuming the same agenda and same news that is being put out by News Corp. Yes, it's in a different flavor, it's more business flavored, but it's the same corporate entity that owns that's news. So I think corporate entities are very, very important to understand what their talking points are. And as a consumer, you should be able to read it between the lines, and that's one thing that they're working on, to be able to distill that and present that to you. So to say that this is Fox or this is CNN or this is News Corp, and these are their talking points that they would talk about positively or negatively. So you get that summary, or the fact that CNN is owned by AT&T. It's a phone company. Of course, they're going to talk about certain things in a certain manner. Yes, there are layers of corporation in between. There is Warner Media, and then there are a couple of more layers, but ultimately it's AT&T money. So yes, they are going to promote their talking points, and so it's very important. Where is the money coming from?
And you're going to report that. That's going to be
that is going to be that is on our roadmap, and we're going to deliver on that very soon.
So much of what we discuss is also just around media lining up blue or red, right? And that's kind of going on in every industry. It's politics, of course, but it's also where you live. It's also how you live. It's so many different things right now.
Yeah.
Do you feel that one side is the problem and the other is not?
Not at all. I don't think that's the case at all. I think, and it's really, really unfortunate that, as you say, that we are more divided than we have ever been before, and that's true across. If you see charts of how people have voted or how people have thought about issues, we were all more purple people than we were red and blue now that we have become. But I even lose my train of thought.
That's okay.
But it's becoming an exaggerated problem than it has ever been before, and it's manifesting itself in various different ways, and it's not helping. To the point where it's funny. I was talking to a friend, and she wants to know, before going on a date, to know the political affiliation of the person she's meeting, because it's become so important that we are going to be very, very divided. There's going to be nothing common between me and the person that I'm meeting. And how did we get here? Like, how did we get so divisive that we can't get common ground to talk about?
I'm going to say that back to you. You have a friend who is filtering who they will date based on political ideology.
Yes.
Which unfortunately is probably very practical.
It is very practical because families and husbands and wives have stopped talking to each other when they don't agree on something, right?
Yeah, it's a disaster. So we know that that's going on right now. We know that the Thanksgiving dinners, for those who have them, are a little more awkward. We know a lot of families are being less communicative, friendships are lost. But what happens to this? Play this out for me, and maybe by looking internationally, we can get some lens into the future. What happens if we keep doing this?
Out, then we get so divided that we can't talk to each other, and we are fighting with each other, literally, right? If we don't agree on ideology, then there are people, not to exaggerate it too much, but places like Syria where people are not agreeing with each other's ideology, and they have been at war for 10 years. And yes, it's more complex, and I'm really simplifying it. But at the same time, it's when you need to be able to talk to people to be able to understand where they're coming from and to be able to have that conversation. That's why I keep coming to you need to understand what they're reading, why are they reading this, why did they form this opinion, and to be able to counter it. Not talking to each other is definitely not the solution.
Say more. Where do you think? What's the next phase of political polarization in this country? Who are we most likely to become, do you think, when you look internationally?
Yeah, I don't want to paint a bad picture, but there are a lot of there are a lot of countries that are doing a lot worse than us.
Yeah.
And we are actually based out of Canada, and we are saying we don't want to become U.S. So there is a scale of. Of
course, they may have been there for a while, but yes.
Yes. So yes, it's not that we are free from polarization, but yeah, it's a spectrum that we don't want to get to the end of. And in India, again, there's an example where people can't agree on a lot of things that are happening in opposite sides of political ideology. If you've seen farmers' protests, there is millions of farmers who are protesting against something that government is implementing, but because the government has a majority vote and they don't agree with them, it's a deadlock. And again, there is no way that they can negotiate with each other, and the differences just grow so much that there's a rift, and there's nothing that can bring us together. And how is that progress, right? How can people being on strike or farmers being on strike for months be good for a country? So if we want to think about advancement of a country, of a society, we have to work together. We have to remind ourselves that the person who I'm not talking to is also a person, and he or she is probably not as quote unquote stupid that I think they are. So let me just understand, why do they think so differently than me, and resolve our differences.
Harleen, what's your opinion about opinions in the media? And I mean that in a genre sense. You know, there's so much content, and what we know is that opinions are cheaper to manufacture, and they can get more attention, right? It's expensive to do good journalism. It's not always lucrative. So what do you what? And sorry if that's a leading question, but what's your view on that?
So, I think here we again very much agree to your number one point. Is what I'm going to say is opinions are good as long as they're labeled. So as long as opinion doesn't pass as facts and it doesn't pass as news, I think it's all right to put out opinions. The reason I say that is news in its just factual form is very hard to consume. So we as humans are good to understanding stories. We are not good at just ingesting facts. So say somebody like some news source like Reuters or AP that just puts out facts. It's like eating broccoli. It's not as enjoyable to read. And that's why these are the news sources that don't have huge readerships. They just present facts. So understanding the context and having an opinion is fine. I think it helps for us to understand, but as long as it doesn't get passed as news, as long as there is substance, as long as the story being reported has accurate facts, and as long as I'm aware that this is somebody's opinion and it's just not somebody's rant to make money.
And what do you think about the volume of media that is being produced that is simply covering other media?
Yeah, that's bizarre. That's so bizarre. Like, on TV, I can't understand how is it called news when one anchor person is talking about the other channel's anchor person. How does that pass as news? How are we? I was watching. It's not amazing for me to claim, but I watched this movie Coming to America 2 by Eddie Murphy.
Oh yeah. What'd you think? What's your Rotten Tomatoes score? You brought it up. Let's go there. What do you give it?
He obviously had a lot more money for this one than he did for the last one. So there's a lot more and a lot coming. But my favorite was the CNN with Trevor Noah, which is obviously a parody on where our news media has gone. And it's just two guys shouting at each other, and this split screen that has become so symbolic, and then one just shouting and even over the anchor. And as you call, like, the talking heads has become, again, it's news flavored entertainment. It has nothing to do with news, and real news is actually not getting reported. And again, going back to those journalists who are literally dying to bring you the stories that you need to know, or don't even make it because we are guilty of consuming this news-flavored entertainment.
So I have been taken aback with my own hypocrisy on this, because I've privately railed against media, about media, for a long time, and then it dawned on me that I launched a podcast about media. So I'm like, okay, what does that make me, right?
Part of the solution there.
Well, it's interesting. It's nuanced though, right? Because it's like, what is media's job? The fourth estate, hold power to account, right? And a lot of those in media that have power need to be held to account. And our hypothesis is that the people that fund them generally and the advertising community can play a part in that, and not to harm them, but just to raise the bar, right? We're trying to focus on what we aspire for it to be, rather than to just call people out. But I think my where I've landed is that it's all in how you use it and what your aims are, right? So what about entertainment? If you're in the business of manufacturing news content or news and opinion content, we both very much agree. You stated the first principle with the Media Roundtable, our first value is that there should be clarity about what is news and what is opinion. But doesn't there have to be some level of entertainment baked into it? Isn't that necessary so that they can operate? And how should those lines be drawn?
Yeah, as I said, I think storytelling is important. So that's why a good journalist is not just putting bullet point facts out, having opinion and opinion based on their training, opinion based on their research, based around what they understand about the issue that you and me, not knowing the context, won't. So I think that is a fair opinion, but an opinion that is purely, again, there to enrage you or just make you angry or make you click is not helping anybody. So yeah, it's a fine line between entertainment and news, and I think it's getting blurrier and blurrier.
So, I mean, you are one of the most unbiased people that we've probably.
I'm not sure that's true. I have my biases, and every day again.
You're proving my point by saying that. That reaction just proves my point, right? But I'm going to I want to ask you to make a sales pitch here, okay? Which is because something you've been talking about is critical thinking, and I love the MLK quote that nothing pains some people more than having to think, right? Yeah. What is the pitch for critical thinking? Why expose myself to that?
Yeah, if you keep thinking in a certain manner without opposing yourself, yes, it's comfortable, but you're never going to understand what's really happening. You're never going to know the truth. And if that you're comfortable with that, then that's sure. But that's not gonna let you lead a life that has impact, that has positive impact, and let you make decisions, including voting, that are really, really important, and your responsibility to do that as accurately as possible. We are all again guilty of being in our bubbles and finding it very and I think it's also very comfortable to do that because we get it. It's so much easier to have this good versus bad narrative, right? It's like good versus evil, or it's like a Marvel movie, like that's the villain and that's the hero, and it's so much easier for me to understand. Like, yes,
news is like the new Western, right? The black hats and the white hats, right?
You can switch in between the Democrats and Republicans depending who you're talking to, and one is the villain and one's the hero. And it's a very easy narrative for me to say, that person is destroying the country or is an idiot or yada yada. But it's very difficult for me to understand. No, that person might be doing some good. I might not agree with everything that they're putting forward, but I'm going to take it upon myself, no matter how uncomfortable, to understand what is the full picture here. And you can do it personally by engaging and understanding with people, and reading again what's the news diet of that person that doesn't agree with you. So on ground news, you can even have an anti-feed. Again, as I said, like you can walk in someone else's news. You can understand what they are reading, and choose a profile that is very different to yours, and just see that if I were a very different person, what would be influencing my mind. Not comfortable, but it's going to give me food for thought, and it's going to help me understand what's really happening.
This is like allegory of the cave type of conversation, right? So let's talk about tech platforms and their impact. Do you have a solve for that? Is that something the government should weigh in on? How do you think that should get worked out?
Yeah, it's a very interesting problem, and I would even, in the defense of the tech platforms a bit, would say that I don't think they set out to be news sites, and they kind of have become without themselves knowing, especially if you talk about Facebook. Twitter again was like for me to say, what am I doing today? And I'm going to tell the whole world. But it's the number one source of news, and they kind of absolve themselves from any responsibility, saying, I'm just a platform and I don't know what people publish on it, and anybody can publish anything. And then what happens is
how's that working out?
Retweets. Yeah, exactly. So the likes and tweets get mistaken for factuality and veracity of the news. Like, oh yeah, it has 20,000 retweets, it cannot be wrong. Based on what? So yeah, I think I personally don't think legislation is the answer, but the more difficult thing is the consumers need to be accountable and to be more vigilant and to be able to say, okay, I'm going to come across this piece of news. What is this? Who published this? And what do they stand from? And that's why Ground News exists, because we do all of that work for you. And if you come across a piece of news, you know exactly where it's coming from, what it stands for. But yeah, tech platforms, of course, every person is a publisher, and they can publish what they want. And if they're angry or whatever, they're going to publish things that not necessarily be true, or if they have some certain other agendas, they might be doing the same.
Did you see the story in Axios the other day about how the rise of conservative media platforms, in that, you know, they're going, okay, well, Twitter's no longer, we're not welcome here, we're going to start our own.
Yeah.
What do you think about
that's
that?
an interesting debate. I did not read the particular story, but yeah, it's very forefront of what's happened with Parler, for example, because I feel like conservatives, especially more to the fringes, people think that their freedom of speech is in trouble, so we need to go somewhere else and start our platform. So, I think if everybody needs to feel that their voice is heard, as long as it's not hurting anybody, and that's a very difficult line to draw. And that's what some of the stuff that we saw on January 6th with Capitol Hill insurrection happening, that do we allow that to happen on a platform? But I do believe that arbitrarily censoring is not going to be the solution, because then you are discouraging dialogue, which is very, very important. If you are going to have a separate platform just for conservatives or just for right, then how are they going to engage with people who are from the other side? And they will never understand each other's, and then the divide just grows. And that possibly cannot be the answer.
Well, and you look at the evolution of Facebook and how it was like, oh, we're just a platform, right? Not we don't weigh in on this stuff, and things are changing, right? Yeah. And I think that a lot of this probably has to do with the fact that elections have consequences, and they are concerned about being regulated, so they're trying to get ahead of that and go, we don't need it, right? But if you look at it long term, what's kind of stupid about this strategy is that they're giving up market share, right? It's bad economically too if you push out a large constituency of your audience rather than trying to find a way to work.
100% agree with you.
With them, right? But what really frightens me down the road is not just that media is divided, but you think about it, we're kind of starting two different economies. I mean, you got the founder of MyPillow ready to launch a social network, right? And what happens when you've got two economies? You already have people living in different regions, voting for different people, watching different things, getting new information. But what happens when the money goes? What else is there to keep us together as a country?
Yeah, it's scary, as you said. Like, if you play the scenario out, it becomes scarier and scarier. The more divided we become, and the lesser common ground we find, it's really, really counterproductive to progress and to a betterment of everybody, which is really, really bad. So I really don't think there should be separate social media networks or Discord places that people should go to, because then how are you going to have that Discord if there is no people, there are no two sides to discuss with each other? Social media is a very interesting place where people become diverse, and because you are anonymous and faceless, you do things that you would never do in real life, which is which is another interesting problem. And it's not even a discussion anymore. It just becomes these slurs and insults.
When Trump left the White House, you had a lot of people singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead," right? My question to you is, because you're watching this stuff as close as anybody, is the state of journalism getting any better as a result?
I don't think just changing a president is going to improve the state of journalism. I think we need to consume better news. We need to again broaden our perspective, do the critical thinking, all the things we are talking about. It's funny, the Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. I lived in UK for some years, and they used to play it on Margaret Thatcher's TED. Did
they really?
Yeah. So it's a lot of parallels. So you can go to, like, we are the same people across the world. They
played that on the anniversary of, you said, her departure from office or her death?
No, for death. Yeah, which was really sad. Which is like,
what is wrong with people?
Yeah. I didn't even realize they did that for Trump, but yeah, we all.
No. I was making that up. I meant that as a metaphor. I have not heard anyone play that and dedicate it to him.
Okay.
I'm saying that's the sentiment, right? That was
the sentiment. I right? See that. Yeah, if you belong to the fraction who thinks that he was the only problem, and you'll be delusional if you did, right? How can just one person be responsible for all the problems, and as soon as he leaves office, everything's going to be daisies and happy. It's just I think we need to work a lot. It's a tough journey ahead of us, and presidents will come and presidents will go, but we just need to, and there will be Republicans and Democrats, but we just need to work to understand what the issues are and agree on more things.
So you've looked at the Media Roundtable pledge. Not sure if you've signed it yet, but I think we will. We will. All right, thank you. No peer pressure here. But here's my question: with the values that we have and the way that we've defined them, clarity, truth, fairness, respect, de-escalation, I'm going to copy paste those foreground news, I think. Wow, that's. Because I was going to ask you, did we miss a spot? That's really
no. I feel like you have it well written, and there is I think what do they say? It's like plagiarism is the best form of flattery. So yeah, I think we were thinking of writing a manifesto for a long time, and you guys all you have all the points, so might as well take that.
Well, that is humbling. So thank you. It's nice to hear that with the folks that are working hard on this.
Well done to you guys for defining that so clearly.
Well, honestly, all this has been just a byproduct of workshopping ideas on this show, right? And we've had, Washington bureau chief for CNN for 20 years, Frank Sesno. He was really helpful in giving feedback on that. We've had a lot of people weigh in on it, and we've just tried to make it a succinct composite. But anyway, I'm interested because you're in this, and we want to continue to sharpen and know what our blind spots are. Okay, so back to ground news. We know why people need it. Why do they need it now?
They need it now because I think the problems more exaggerated than it's ever been before. We saw the biggest day in terms of our usage, download, subscription on January 7th, when it was very evident from people on either side of the political spectrum saying, there is a problem, I acknowledge it, and I'm going to try and find a solution that at least gives me full picture. So we were very happy that there was an acknowledgement of the issue, and we need to just work on the solution now.
Harleen, can you tell us a little bit about the roadmap for the platform that you've built? What can we expect down the road?
Sure. Down the road, we are going to keep introducing more analysis and more features that, again, help our readers and subscribers understand their news the best they can. We are adding more vectors apart from bias, time, location. We are going to add like factuality or corporate bias, which I mentioned. And we are going to have more spigots. So if you are a newsletter reader, it's interesting when we talked the first time, you said that we don't have a daily newsletter. So I'm going to make that happen, the number one thing. So if you just like news showing up in your inbox, yeah, there we go.
Well, I know that for me, just as a user, when you think about consumer behavior, is like, for me, I have a billion news sources, but I have them all feed into my inbox, because what I'm not going to do is like stop in the middle of a day and just start going out and seeking. Yeah. So I need the flow coming at me. And I think a lot of consumers are like that.
That makes perfect sense. And I think, again, a busy person like you having it show up in the inbox makes a lot of sense, where just so regardless of what the consumption, not the consumption, we actually like to use the word comprehension of the news that we want to present to a consumer. We are going to try to do that in as many formats as possible. We are thinking an audio version of it. If you want to listen to just the top news of the day for 5 minutes, or the roundup, well, there are other ones out there, but we are going to show you a balanced picture and from as many different sources as possible.
Okay, Harleen, we are unfortunately out of time, but this is an enlightening conversation. I really respect and appreciate you and the work that you're doing. I know you've sacrificed a lot to make this happen. A couple bonus questions. What is harder, sending something to Pluto or getting balanced news?
Balanced news. I say that always. I take the former as just a technological problem, and if you put just enough effort into it, you can solve it. But news is more of a human problem, as we've talked about psychology and how do we break people out of their cycles that exist, and how do we incentivize the right behaviors, is a much, much more complex problem. So definitely the latter.
And for people that have listened to this and want to engage, what is the first thing they should do?
Just go to ground.news and see what we stand for, and try to consume the multi-source news that that Ground News is providing. It'll
make you healthy.
Yes, and less anxious, as we talked about.
That's right. Harleen, thank you so much. This show is dedicated to the notion of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And if you've found this helpful and are committed to the cause, please subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. Please also visit oxfordroad.com and subscribe to The Influencer, which is our weekly newsletter. Special thanks to Bianca, Kyle, Jennifer, and the team at Podcast One for making this happen. And thank you again, Harleen.